Hello. So my great big mammoth, this is the first one that I had come up, is ready to be harvested. You can kind of take a look there. So for mammoths, you know it's ready to be harvested essentially when the petals around the end here are crunchy and falling off. And let's see if you can see this. I know I got the sun behind me. But all these petals, when you take your hand to it and rub, they just fall right off. As you can see, beautiful, beautiful seeds underneath there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for the rest of the plant. Yeah, this plant was definitely ready to be harvested. Some of these seeds even came out when I was just gently brushing off the flowers, which are so beautiful. So now, I'm just going to peel back some of these and start popping these out, rip the plant in half, you know, and start taking the seeds out, and I'm just going to collect them in here for now. And there we have it. That whole big sunflower head turned out to be all of these, probably 1,000 or so, which is pretty spectacular considering all of these just came from one of these. Now I will soak these in a salt brine for 24 hours and roast this small little batch. And of course I'll save a couple dozen to plant for next year. Well, I've got a new raised bed here and here that I just built this fall, and I'm going to be filling this in with some native soil this fall, compost in the spring. And since it's going to be filled with soil and compost anyways, I'm putting the old sunflower head and the stalk in here, as well as all the rest of my clippings in the garden from the fall, just in the bottom of the bed to decompose, you know, compost system, and then it saves me a trip back to my compost pile. Buddy. Thanks for helping. Good to have a garden helper. Okay, now that the sunflowers have been taken off of the head, I've got them in the kitchen here. Haha. I'm going to prepare a brine. And since this is a small batch, I've got a ½ gallon of water, represented as so. Close enough. And ½ cup of salt. Making a brine, Gotta mix it up. Very efficient, very fancy. So exciting, just great content. And then we're gonna take all of our sunflowers, dump them on in, and really mix it up. This step is going to get rid of any kind of bacteria, essentially, that might have been growing on out there. It'll also kill any worms or any bugs that you probably threw in here. So I can feel that the salt is dissolved, and that is satisfactory. I'm going to put an undersized lid on to smush down as many of these as I can so they're nice and submerged, and I'm going to let that sit for a day. Alright, it's the next day. These have been soaking overnight in the brine. Pretty lovely, actually. They've swelled up a little bit in size. So I'm going to dump them in a colander, and then we're going to dry them out on this fresh towel for a couple hours with the wind blowing on them before we roast them. Man, that's a lot of sunflowers. Definitely seems like there's a lot more here than were on the towel when we were picking the sunflower head yesterday. Again, that's because these have swelled up a little bit with the brine. Got a lovely sound to them too. Yeah, that should be good. Let them dry for just a little bit. Hello again. It's the afternoon. These have been drying for about 5 hours. They're perfectly fine. I'm gonna roast them now. I'm gonna bake mine at 300, and I don't know, for about 20 minutes, checking every couple of minutes and stirring them so they don't get too like dark brown or black. Don't want them charring and overcooking on the inside. It's more of an art as opposed to an exact science. This is a really old stove, and the temperature is not exactly the most accurate and consistent, so a low heat is what I would call 300. An average heat would be maybe 350 if you were baking something. I made a chicken roast last night at 450. I'd call that really high. So anyways, you could do this on a metal baking pan with some parchment paper, but I've got these really great silicone doodads, which I use for everything, and I don't have to waste parchment paper. This is easier to do when you're not talking to a camera. Nailed it. Spread them out, take off the sunflower petals. You might still have little bits of residue in here. It's fine. These are pretty tasty if you eat them at this point. Definitely salty. But I like them even better when they roast. At this point, the way they are, they're a little chewy still. Like, you can't, I have a hard time fully masticating the outer shell. You can eat the seed inside just fine, but then it's like once you get the salt off, it's just fiber that's in your mouth. Unless you got a whole mouthful of them that you can create some sort of a bolus to swallow. Just doing one at a time is kind of hard to swallow. So, gotta take a handful. Heaven forbid. They are really tasty. Anyways, oven takes a little while to heat up. I'm just gonna put these in. Middle rack, you know. Oh. Put my timer on. 20 minutes. And watch through the front. Sweet. Well, it's been about 15 minutes. 5 minutes left on a 20-minute timer. Just gonna turn everything off. I've been stirring these every 3 minutes. They look good, they smell good. Pull one out. Ooh, look at that. That's gorgeous. You can see how they've darkened up a little bit. Got a great smell. It's kind of a nutty smell, in my opinion. And as you move them around, they'll sound a little bit more hollow. You can tell that any moisture that was inside has burnt off now. I'll give you an example of one that was probably on the periphery and it burnt too much versus ouch. This is a good one. Hi, camera. This, oh god, is this gonna focus? Okay, so it's not gonna focus too well. Deal with it. This one, you can see on the left, right here, is dark and this one is light. This one is burnt. This one is correct. They all taste good. This is a Mammoth sunflower. This is a species. You want sunflowers with big heads to make these big seeds that are good for eating. And if you've never had roasted sesame seeds, I'd say the flavor is very akin to tahini sauce, which is popular in a lot of Greek dishes. Or if you make hummus, tahini, which is just sesame seeds, I think. Anyways, very analogous flavor. I'm going to Just store these in a bowl. Yeah. Keep them at room temperature. They'll be gone in a couple days. I may have been overzealous. This bowl is far too large. I'll just have to pick another sunflower head. I've got a couple more to pick actually. In about 2.5 weeks, I'll have 2 big heads, 2 medium heads. I'll be able to harvest and do this again. If you want to check out my sunflower growing process, I do have a garden tour playlist you can check out. I'll put a card up here and stuff. Really check out any video from week 20 or later. You can see sunflowers that are nice and tall. I'll talk about them at great lengths, but feel free to watch the entire gardening season if you want to hear conversation that I give to my viewers about planting sunflowers and the trials and tribulations I've had with squirrels and chipmunks or the weather, anything else. They are a fun thing to grow. I was sitting out in my garden yesterday just, putzing around. Some kids were walking by and they love the sunflowers. They heard, "Ah, sunflower!" You can see my garden from the street. They kind of look like ornaments, like a big 11-foot shepherd hook. Beautiful thing. So a little bit of creative placemaking in your garden. Lastly, talk a little bit about seed saving. I've got about 25 seeds here. I just took a handful from the whole big sunflower we processed. They're nice and dry. And I just label a nice fresh Ziploc bag with the name and some phenotypic information. I only harvested from the tallest stalk with the widest head on it. Thinking, who knows if I do this year after year, picking only the best sunflower, maybe I'll form a new variety in 20 years that's 15 feet tall and 20 inches wide. The Gregor Mendel and me just getting excited. But I will keep this mostly shut, except for a corner, leave it out for a couple days, and then when I'm convinced that everything is dry, I will just store it, buy the rest of my seeds down in my cellar. That's it. And in the springtime, I plant 3 of them next to each other. Because I say, you save so many seeds. I'm only going to grow maybe 7 or 8 sunflowers out in my backyard. So I just plant 3, in an area this big, and you only need 1 to come up. So if multiples come up, I just snip them off, and away it goes. They're super fun to grow.